I love listening to old records, and I think it's no wonder that this technology, which was once considered almost completely obsolete, is experiencing a resurgence. Besides the obvious vintage charm of a needle on vinyl, which we all love, music was actually recorded quite differently in the vinyl era. Besides being mostly analog, one significant difference from the vinyl era to the digital era is that bands were often recorded playing their songs together live in the studio. Now, as a result, the microphone bleed is a critical element to achieving some of the vibe associated with that live recorded sound. The purpose of this little parlor trick is to demonstrate that when you record a band together in the same room, you get a thing called mic bleed. Mic bleed is nothing but the sound of other instruments in a particular instrument's mic. Thanks to this quarantine, I can't demonstrate mic bleed with a live band. But I can record myself simultaneously playing a guitar into an amp mic'd with a Shure SM57, playing a kick drum mic'd with a Shure Beta 52A, and singing into a Shure SM7B. In a live recording, we're typically aiming to minimize mic bleed. I've chosen mics for each instrument that are highly directional and even placed them in consideration of minimizing mic bleed, with the vocal mic behind and facing away from the instruments, the kick mic placed inside the port, and the guitar amp mic angled away from the kick drum. Nonetheless, if we listen to each mic individually, you can hear at least traces of other instruments in the kick drum mic. Lots of kick drum and a little vocal in the guitar mic. And lots of both instruments in the vocal mic.
Human beings in a mob. What's a mob to a king? What's a king to a god? What's a god to...
Now, in the digital era, the challenge is presenting the listener with a sense that the instruments were performed together in the same space. In reality, the drums are being tracked in Minnesota. The guitar, bass, and vocals are tracked in separate sessions here at Peach Music in Los Angeles, and everything else is sampled and synthesized instruments that are sequenced here on the computer. So how do we glue all of these elements together for a cohesive listening experience and give the listener a sense, somewhat, that the instruments were performed in the same space? Here's a trick that I use to simulate the very mic bleed that we would be seeking to minimize if this was a live recording, and use it to enhance the vibe of our recording. I've set up a large diaphragm condenser mic in the big room. I've also set up 2 speakers aimed away from the microphone. I'm going to play the track I'm working on through the speakers. Why aren't the speakers facing the microphone? Because I don't want to record the direct output of the speakers. I want to record the reflections off the walls, just like how the mic would hear bleed from all the instruments. Now that we've recorded the mic bleed, let's head into the control room and see how it sounds. Here's the track where we recorded our imitation mic bleed. If we listen to it on its own, it doesn't sound very good. But if we ever so gently dial it into our mix, it adds excitement, depth, and realism to our track. I've got the effect turned all the way up so you can audibly hear the difference, and even so you may need to listen in headphones to really perceive the difference.
Hey, yeah, hey, hey, yeah, yeah.
In actuality, we'll dial the effect back to the point to where it's hardly noticeable to the casual listener. But it's adding an intangible dose of excitement, depth, and realism that's inherent to live recorded tracks, but otherwise typically absent. So there it is, another trick that I'm using to make my album sound less digital, more live, and thus more soulful. Thanks so much for watching. Check back in later in the week. I'll be sharing the first finished track from the album. The track's called Where the End Begins. You can hear it before it's released, and you can see all the behind the scenes of the recording. I'll see you next time.